And yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan. So the focus is, as we know, which has been promoted. Hello, please, if you don't mind, please help us mute your mic if you are not speaking. Thank you. So we want to have a town hall of educators. As Mr. Jonathan has mentioned, we have a few persons that have been earmarked to speak at this fora, or this forum, as the case may be. Mr. Jonathan is one of them. I will just lay the foundation and I yield the floor. I also have one of my lecturers from school who, when she saw the post, indicated interest to be part of this webinar or this town hall. And I gladly welcomed it because, again, what better way to hold this town hall and to hear from the experts themselves. We also have Mr. Gbolahon Olojede, whom I have invited to join so that we can have this conversation together. He's a social analyst. He comments on progress.
Franklin, your mic is muted. Can you unmute your mic?
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, my other device just came up, and then I thought that I should switch to that quickly. So that is a brief lineup of what we have to share today. So we'll just discuss the issues around discipline in education. What really is discipline and how can it best be applied to education? And everyone here, I believe, has an opinion, as I have seen from all the conversations that we have had. So we are going to hear from each person as much as our time will allow us, and we are going to see how we can run with this as quickly as possible. So we don't intend to keep us too long, but we will make the best of this opportunity to share something very meaningful that will also be of great benefit to our children. So that is our lineup. Permit me to just quickly share my screen.
Hold on, I have to make you the host so that you can share.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, go ahead.
All right, sir. Thank you. I'm getting to it now. Sorry, just give me a minute.
So, Mr. Franklin.
Yes. So let's please go on, sir. You were going to say something.
So don't forget to introduce yourself. Don't assume that all of us here know you and what you do.
Oh, thank you very much. That is very important. Sorry, I got caught up in the rush to meet up. Okay, so for those who don't know me, my name is Onoben Franklin. I am an educationist by training. Precisely, I studied guidance and counseling from the University of Ibadan. I also studied educational psychology at the University of Lagos. Since graduation, I have dedicated myself to the education industry. I made up my mind long after, just a few weeks after finishing school, that I was going to commit myself wholly to education. So even whilst there was, the distraction or the attraction to other industries, especially because of the places where you can make more money. Incidentally, I graduated from University of Ibadan with a first class. I remember then one of our brethren in church who was a leading figure had called me and said that, oh, with this your first class, at that time, you will be very welcome in the banking industry, that they were looking for bright minds like yourself to, hold the fort. And when I went back to think about it and then prayed, I told myself that is not what I wanted to do. I'm not a finance person. I do not intend to work in the bank. So I, gave myself wholly to education. I worked briefly as a college counselor in one of the leading institutions in Nigeria, in Lagos here. And then afterwards, work took me into administration. So I have spent the better part of my career as a school administrator than I have been as a counselor or a teacher. Even though once in a while I still dabble into teaching and or whatnot, but most of my career journey, which has been over a decade, going to 2 now, have been in administration. So I have had the opportunity to interface with other people, and I've seen firsthand some of the things that teachers struggle with when it comes to the teaching profession, because I've had to lead teams. I have worked as an administrator at a teacher training institution, and that has also helped me to understand some of the nuances of the teaching profession. So apart from what I was trained with or what I was given during my training, I also had the opportunity to train others. And since then, I have set up my own small or growing industry or company, which is White World Veritas Project. What we do basically at White World is human capital development, and that involves everything that includes education, trainings in schools, trainings for families. We focus on mental health. We focus on capacity building for teachers, for school administrators, and it will interest you how many schools don't have as much standard as we think that we should have. Even this conversation that we are having now has really thrown up a lot of issues, a lot of gaps in the education space. And some of the responses I got when I made my initial post on this subject that we want to discuss really scared me, that the kind of people that we have teaching our children are the ones that if you sample their opinions or their views about what education should be, or what how teachers should respond when it comes to managing children, you will really be scared. The kind of responses I got were not good at all, and I am hoping that many of them whom I invited to this platform will be here so that we can interact. Like I said, it's a town hall meeting and we are going to rub minds together. So I want to confirm that you all can see my screen so that we can move swiftly. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, sir. All right. So what we are discussing today, as has been introduced, is the question: can teachers teach without disciplining learners? And because we are talking about learners of all age range, from the kindergarten to grade school and then secondary school, is it possible to have teachers teach without discipline? And this is the subject we want to discuss today. So how did it start? First of all, let's go to the subject matter. We are all aware of the incidents of the woman whom I think they said that school is in Ikorodu, that hit a child because the child was not catching up as fast as she wanted the child to. That in itself raised an uproar in society on social media. And incidentally, the Lagos State Ministry of Education stepped in, or the government stepped in. And then I hear now that the woman is in Kirikiri. May God help her to come out of this, come out better, come out stronger. But that threw up an issue that we have left untouched for a long time. And that is the issue of teachers hitting children at every time that they feel like. And this is not just about public schools, because this school, I'm sure, was not a public school. It's a private school. Now, we used to think in the days of yore that it's only public school teachers that hit children, because again, there was nobody to supervise. But we have seen that many of these teachers that teach in the public schools now find themselves in private schools, and they still continue this culture of hitting children. You don't come early to school, they flog you. You misbehave, quote and unquote, as they call it, they flog you. Whatever it is, at every turn, every teacher, every adult in the school look for an opportunity to hit a child. And we call it discipline. So what I did in my own response, I love to be controversial. So I made a post, which is what you are seeing on the screen right now. It says the JD, that is the job description of a teacher, doesn't include disciplining children. The role is strictly the parents, or the role of the parents. No teacher should beat a child. And of course, I posted it on all the platforms of education that I belong to on Facebook and other places. And I got a harvest of reactions. A lot of people were saying it's not possible. A lot of people were asking me, are you sure you are a teacher? Some people were saying, this is Africa. It's part of our culture to beat children. Oh, were you not beaten when you were small? See how your life has become. So a lot of reactions, many things that people were saying. And these were groups of teachers, proprietors, educators. The reactions, like I said earlier, some of them were very frightening, because a lot of people, even though they condemned what the woman did, justified hitting. So they justified flogging or beating children, even though they still in the same breath condemned what the woman. So there was a controversy, or there was a confusion there. How can you justify what the woman did and yet condemn what the woman did, and also at the same time, condemn or justify beating? So I was confused. So that started making me think, what can we do? How can we respond? Because many times when things like this happen, we react to it. The government has reacted. They have arrested the woman. I also saw this morning that they have given that child a scholarship. They've given the parents a 2-bedroom apartment. They've given some money. That is reactionary. What can we do? How can we respond appropriately so that this thing that has become a menace, not only in the education industry, but even at home, in the society, once I'm not happy with anybody or somebody, the next thing is to resort to violence, to resort to physical use of force. We want to exert ourselves on people. That is what it's a culture that has seeped into education. So what we did at White World was to then initiate this program. And that is creating the platform for us to have this conversation. So I quickly reached out to a few friends. Mr. Jonathan is one of them, and he was kind enough to agree to join me in this conversation so that we can have this, Giorgio. And then I started promoting it, pushed it out so that we can have this question answered. Some of the questions that we want to answer in this discussion is, what does discipline mean in the context of education and learning? Because like I said in the interaction through that post that I made initially, a lot of people knew what discipline is not, but they don't know what discipline really is. Some people can define discipline the way it is written in the English dictionary, or when you Google it, you see the definition. But in the context that we use it, what does it mean? When you tell a child or another person, I am going to discipline you, what does that really mean? Does it mean the same thing as is put out in the English dictionary? So whereas we say that discipline does not mean beating a child, what does it mean when you say, I will discipline you? What does that really mean? That's one of the questions we hope to answer in this discussion.
And then the next question is, why is it necessary? Can it also be justified? Is it justifiable? We say, oh, some people told me in those interactions that we just need to know how to measure it. We just need to measure it. We just need to do appropriate discipline. What is appropriate discipline? What is appropriate flogging? What is appropriate hitting? These are some of the questions we want to answer. Again, as it concerns teachers in the classroom. Can teachers teach without resorting to discipline or using it as a tool? So I was interacting, again, my wife is also a teacher in another school. And then one of the conversations we had in the build up to this is that one of the things that teachers struggle with is class management. How do you manage your class if you don't discipline, quote and unquote? And then I told her that what we call management, classroom management, is not the same as class control of the people. They can be two different things. You want to control a person's behavior, reaction to things, and not necessarily management, because class management within education is not to put a gun at a child's head and say, if you move, I will shoot you. That is what we have termed class management to be. And that's what many people, many individuals who find themselves in education, not necessarily as teachers, but because they didn't find job elsewhere, that's what they know as class management. And you have to exert some level of authority or control that makes all the children, like we used to see in the days I attended public school, they just tell you, everybody put your head on the desk and sleep. Or if I hear this, you will. So those things are some of the questions we want to answer. Another question is, should a teacher or school discipline a learner? Is it the role of the school or the teacher to discipline a student? Other questions include, is there such a thing as African or Western approach to discipline? That's one of the feedback I got from the post I made earlier. A lot of people say, this is Africa, we beat, we do this, we do that. And all those people in the Western world that don't beat their children, see how their society have turned out to. And we justify it under our Africanness or under our African culture. We justify hitting another person because we claim that in Africa, that is our culture. So we must hit one another. We must hit our children. The husband is not happy with the wife, you hit her. The bus conductor is not happy with the passenger, he hits him. The driver is not happy, you hit. Every time you're not happy with somebody, you hit. Once you feel that you have the power to exert yourself physically, you resort to hitting. What you can resolve with judge or with words, you rather would use your physical force. So it has become a culture in Africa, and we justify it in education, claiming that because it is our way, we must continue to do it. The people that flogged us before now, they made us better. So we must flog our children to make them better. I don't know how valid that is, but that is part of the question. But I'm hoping this discussion will answer. So we also have another question. Can a person truly discipline another? Can I, for instance, truly discipline another person? Or is it a, what's it called now? Is it a personal thing? Is discipline a personal journey? The attainment of self-regulation, self-control, is it something that one person can do for another person? Or is it something that the individual himself will, after gaining some experience and learning and exposure, will attain self-regulation, self-control? We hope that this webinar will also answer that question. And the final question here is, who holds the ultimate responsibility to discipline a child? Is it the parents at home or the teachers at school? We know that a lot of parents take their children to school and say, help me flog this child. He did so and so at home. Some schools will say, okay, I will report to your parents. Who amongst these two authorities in the life of a child should have the authority to discipline that child? Is it the parents or the home? So the parents at home or the teachers at school? So just before I yield the floor, it is my honest and professional opinion that if a child is sent to school and at every point in time in the learning journey, the child does not feel the way this girl in this picture is feeling, education is incomplete. If a child is afraid that my teacher is going to flog me, that child is not in the right space. So one of the things I shared with those who were interacting with me during the course of the build-up for this event is that many times we say as educators that for learning to take place, the environment must be conducive. We all know it, we all chant it. But many times when we say these things, we pay attention only to the physical environment. Oh, the place must be lit, must be cool, must be this, there must be no sound, no noise. But we do not pay attention to the mental environment. There is a mental state that encourages learning. A child that is afraid cannot learn, will not learn, and in fact, should not learn under such conditions. But that is the atmosphere that we have created often in the space where children learn. The children are afraid of teachers. The children are afraid, even at home. For instance, I am the one who studied education in my family. My wife is a journalist, just like we said, because she didn't find, or because we need her to be a bit more flexible, close early, so that we can have more time for our children. She needed to take up a teaching role. So she's now a teacher. For the past 2 years, she has been teaching and she has been learning on the job. But I will shock you to let you know that my children learn better from her than they learn from me. The reason is simple. They fear me. They don't fear her, quote and unquote, as in they are closer to her in terms of they can open up to her, they can behave more like kids around her than they do with me. So when there is a need for daddy to put them through in 1 or 2 homework or assignment, or they are a bit more, reluctant to come to me or to catch up as quickly as possible, because they feel, oh, if I don't get it, daddy will spank me, daddy will beat me. So, but with her, they are more open. So that is what I'm saying. The same thing applies at school, where a child is afraid or fearful of the reaction of a teacher. For instance, this child and the teacher in the build up of this discussion, that child, I'm sure, imagine somebody hitting you and you cannot run away, because if you do that, you'll probably get more beating or more hits. So if that child have any cause to go to that teacher to ask, oh, I don't understand this, do you think that child will be willing to go? Because he knows that if I don't get it, the teacher will flog me or will hit me again. So even when there's a gap or gaps in the learning journey of that child, the child will not be able to approach the authority that should put him or her through. And that is, for me, the biggest environment that must be conducive for learning to take place. So whereas we promote this culture of discipline, quote and unquote, which I hope we are going to demystify in this conversation, we make our children to become fearful, and they do not learn as much as they can learn. We look at the Western world and say that they behave anyhow. We don't like some of their behavior. But it is from there that we've had inventors. It is from there that we have people who have discovered things that is changing the world. Those people learned those things from school. Which of our children have, learned and explored and invented things that we want to, be proud of? We have a few, but it is a sprinkle. I'm talking of the whole of the African context, or Nigeria as the case may be. Many times it's when they go abroad and they learn there, you see how they begin to fly. But back home, they are restricted, they are fearful. And for me, I don't think that, but it's not for me to say. I am going to, at this point, yield the floor, maybe for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes, for our guest contributors to make their input on this very important subject. Mr. Jonathan has introduced himself, so I'm going to ask him to take the lead. I hope that Dr. Ezia Hunrukwe is in the house, so that she can go next after him. And then if Mr. Bolahon Lejede is in the house, he will go next after. And then after those contributions, we will then swing the mic open to the floor. As many who have contributions, who have opinions, who have questions to ask, we will then take them. And then I will come back and just wrap up everything. So, Mr. Jonathan, over to you, sir. How do you react to this conversation that we have on the floor this morning?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Franklin. Indeed, I think I wasn't talking to you. I'm on a meeting. Sorry about that. my study is just by the living room, so my children they keep interrupting me from time to time. Anyway, so I want to tell you, have said it all. I think to a large extent, I kind of align with your thinking, even though a lot of times it is not as easy as you put it, because some of this, I was in a school during the week where it was a public school, and the teacher in that class was attending to close to 30, 40 learners. And then she was alone. She was alone in the class, with those 30, 40 learners. So already you can see the amount of, and she was working with children who are ages 5, 6, and maybe 7, the so-called nursery 2 or nursery 1 class, where those children need a lot of attention. So that kind of environment, sometimes the teachers too can be stressed. And it's when they are stressed that they also begin to make mistakes. So I believe that no teacher, to a large extent, set out to be hostile to children. I'm not saying that we don't. We have unfortunately also, like you mentioned, because of the fact that many people are in education because they couldn't fit in or they couldn't get a job. Obviously Nigeria has a high unemployment problem, and one of the industries that tend to have more openings is the education industry. For people to teach children. However, the private schools who are employing these people are not devoting time to retrain these people, because most people are coming into education from non-education oriented field, where they would have gotten some grounding on how to, work with children. So there have been just maybe somebody is hired off from maybe from geography, and he or she is thrown into the class to start working with children. So that person now begins to wobble and fumble through it until maybe they get a hang of what works best. So that is one major problem I have seen. Now, that video that we are referring to, you want to wonder what was the essence, or what was the reason that the teacher was hitting the child. She was trying to teach the child how to write 60, 61, 62. And now that child they said, according to what was mentioned in the story, that the child is 3 years old.
What?
Now you now begin to wonder, is writing 60 something an appropriate topic to be taught to a 3-year-old? The answer is obviously no. But we know that most schools do it because they want to impress parents. Your child is at age 3, is already writing from 1 to 3. Yes, there are some gifted learners who will obviously be able to do that. But from age 0 to 1, the child's brain that controls writing is not well developed, which is why you have to spend a whole year trying to teach a child how to write. But once that child is, let's say, age 6 to age 7, which is the age most children in England, in the US, even in Singapore, start year 1, you can teach them how to write in 1 or 2 weeks, because the brain, the part of the brain that controls writing is already well developed. So it's like teaching a fish how to swim. The fish doesn't, a fish how to walk on land, or teaching, so you will have to struggle, because, and even you will even fail, and you have to beat the fish, because the fish is not yet wired to. So I think the problem, or part of the problem, is that we are having unrealistic expectations of these children, particularly in this case that brought up this discussion. So I think teachers need to be informed of what is appropriate to teach a child at that age. And even if you need to stretch them, you don't need to force. If they're not yet ready to get it, give them time. I take my own child, for instance. I had a child who was, I think we had to start her in nursery school at 18 months, 18 months going to 2. And then this child was struggling. What her sister was doing, at that, maybe not at that age, but at that class, But when I reflected, I saw that this child was not yet ready because she was too young for the class she was put in. She was born in she's born in February, so she had to start school in that same year that she was born, and so she was way too young, But so I had to make her repeat that class, and when she continues, all the things she was struggling with, she got them with ease, So on the issue of discipline, I think I also want to emphasize what Mr. Franklin had mentioned earlier, in that children cannot learn in an atmosphere of fear. So the number one responsibility of a teacher is to take out fear from the classroom. Be very welcoming. One of the trainings that I run, in South Africa, we call it creating a learning environment, for children. And the environment has to be welcoming. It has to be inspiring. The children should look forward to being in class. So if you are working in an atmosphere of fear, particularly for the young learners, you will not get the best of them. And also to emphasize, we are now in the age of AI. A lot of us will say that, well, this was how I was taught. Like for me, I must confess, I have made that mistake with the children, my children, because I also teach them. But because I was taught with hitting, just like that video, it was my dad that used to teach me, and I knew I went through a lot in his hands. He's trying to teach me maybe maths. He's saying 5 times 6. And if I'm thinking, the way they will hit me, in fact, and that hitting automatically disorientates me, and the whole everything just goes downhill. So all that while, I made learning very difficult for me, until later on when I could take charge of my own learning, I went on to pick up, so it doesn't work. So teachers, for those of us who are working every day with children, I think we all know that that doesn't work. Then I think the last thing I would like to say is that, I know that it's kind of challenging if you have to work with children in a class and then it seems as if they are disorderly. We need to find appropriate disciplinary measures or commensurate disciplinary this and a lot of it is that for some children, beating them doesn't even work because they have learned to acclimatize their body to pain. So no matter how you hit them, no matter how you flog them, it doesn't. As in those days when I was in school, we used to call them unshakable. As in, when you flog them, you can flog them 20 times. In fact, they use it to win accolades because we are looking forward to the unshakables coming out to receive cane. The principal will flog for where they will not shake. While when they leave, all the students will start hailing them. The whole school will be in uproar, hailing them. I mean, so what have you achieved? It's like you only just ended up promoting the guy's ability to absorb pain. So we need to find what are the appropriate measures. So for some children, it could be withdrawal of certain privileges. Maybe maybe they don't get to go to break. So while others are going for break, they can stay behind, okay, or maybe they can go to the naughty corner and they can take a break and go and sit somewhere, you know, and then so these are actually when there is reason to discipline a child. Maybe a child is hitting another child when class is going on. So because the essence of discipline or the purpose of discipline is for corrective, as a corrective measure. And for those of us who read the Bible here, we know what the Bible says, and I believe to some extent for the Muslims, the Quran will also preach that, which says, train up a child in the way he or she should go. So that the aspect of training has a lot to do with correction. Children don't come with follow-come set of, discipline. They come with just being there, and they really don't know what is the right way to go or what are the consequences of certain behaviors that they're exhibiting. So it's in the place of authority figures like parents and teachers, to begin to apply certain amount of consequence for wrongdoing, like telling lies, like stealing. You want to be able to apply commensurate consequence, which is what we call discipline, for those errant behaviors with the purpose of correcting the child. which is far, this is, and this is far removed from the issue we are even discussing, because this child didn't do anything wrong, nothing wrong. Just that the teacher was just frustrated with the whole process. I believe that for her, instead of beating the child, she would have excused the child and give the child more time, But I guess maybe she just felt nobody will know, and she wanted to carry out her anger or her position on the child, which was very wrong. So I will stop there for now to allow others to make their own comments. I believe the little I've said maybe have made some bit of sense to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It's made plenty sense, not small, plenty sense. And thank you for sharing those practical examples and also relating it to the subject that we are discussing today, especially the case of the woman and the child in the video. One of the things I also shared during the course of the reaction to that video is, may one not become popular or go viral over the wrong thing. Imagine the woman, I don't know how long she has been in the education space, and just this little mistake have now made her go viral or popular for the wrong thing. And whilst the child is benefiting from that, that show, she is languishing now somewhere. And that is, the case has not even started. They have kept her in Kirikiri until maybe sometime later this month, when the case will come up for discussion. And Lagos State and the way they frown at violence and all of those things, they will use her as a scapegoat when she ought to be receiving reward for good work that she's doing. So you have said quite a bit, a lot that we need to hold on to. So I want to ask quickly if Dr. Jacinta is in the house, so that we can swing the mic over to her. I've checked, I don't know, so I don't know if she's logged in with a different name. Dr. Jacinta, are you in the house? Okay, if she's not here, Mr. Gbola or Daisy, are you in the house? Okay, so while we wait for them, let's take some contributions from others. We have people who are also in the education space here. I'm sure that a lot of them who have interacted with me wants to come and bear their minds in this forum. Some of them have, promised that they will come and show me, to come and say it as it is, and I'll be glad to learn from them, as I hope they will also learn from the contributions that we are making here. So please, if you are in the house and you would like to say one or two things to add to this subject, to contribute, to help us learn or see a different perspective from what we are discussing, or give us some other views, we'll be glad to have you. So let's take a few reactions based on what we have heard so far. So we'll be going like that. If we have our contributors or our guest speakers in, we'll pause a bit and take their contributions, and then we'll come back again for more reactions. So we want to take as many questions or reactions or contributions as possible. Again, like I said earlier, this is a town hall, educators' town hall. Let's talk about this issue of discipline in the classroom. What does it mean? How can we best handle it? So let's have you. You want to start by raising your hand so that we don't make it rowdy, and then we acknowledge you. You can, if you know how to use the Zoom tool, there's a place where you can put up your hand and we'll acknowledge you, and you can unmute and speak.
If somebody puts up a message in the chat box, Damilola, unusual.
Yes, okay, you're saying, my name is Damilola. I just wanted to know if yelling at students is bad. Okay, from what you have heard so far, let me not say a yes or no to that response. Now, you are yelling at them, just like Mr. Jonathan has said, to probably express your frustration at them. Now, as a teacher or as a human being, you can get frustrated, especially if you have a heavy workload. You have a good number of students and you don't have an assistant, like Sir Jonathan has also mentioned in his insights. Now, because you are frustrated, you decide to yell at them. It's a decision. You can decide not to. Now, in yelling at those children, you are either trying to achieve two things. One, to exert dominance. My voice is louder than yours. If I shout, everybody will become afraid and then they will mellow down. Is that the purpose? Is that the goal of teaching? Another thing is to instill fear. Oh, teacher is angry now. If we continue, she will flog us. Now you have shifted them from a safe atmosphere of learning to a fearful atmosphere. So whereas you feel that your yelling is to help you gain some level of control, it is rather counterproductive because the children will probably become afraid. Those ones who Mr. Jonathan described as the unshakables, we want to dare you to see what can she do if I push her a little more. She have just yelled at us. If we push her more, is she going to do this? We have had cases of students who tell teachers to their face, my daddy will sack you, or my mommy will sack you, or we will report you and they will fire you, or I'm the one paying your salary. And that can happen when a teacher feels that he can match up with a student, word for word. You want to exert some level of control. What happens in those instances is that the children find safe grounds to rebel. Whereas if we swing it around, you find more appropriate ways to win participation. My wife was sharing with me that in her observation as she interacts, because in the school where she teaches, she's one that's working with the lowest age range. Now, if they have a set of rules or code that governs the whole space, no child likes to be left out. They don't like to feel like the odd one out amongst the group, especially if that child is extroverted. So if you have such a child and he or she is, trying to gain attention, the best punishment, if we are to use that word, that you can give to that child is to ignore that child, to turn the attention of the others away from that individual. But when you begin to give them that attention, or you begin to make others to make them the center of attraction, you are empowering them the more. Again, this is not to take away from the fact that it is not easy, as we say it. Mr. Jonathan has established that fact. We can say these things, it sounds good in theory, but in practice, it may not be as easy as we think. However, with consciousness, with mindfulness, this is some of the tools that teachers need to have. You need to be mindful. You need to be conscious. You will need to now manage your own emotions first before you express it. Whilst I work as a teacher, as an administrator at a teacher training institute where I work, one of the things that we teach teachers is what we call spiritual renewal. And this spiritual renewal is not talking about your religion. It's talking about you as an individual coming to a place of tranquility, of peace, harmony within yourself first, before you step into the classroom or before you step into the teaching profession. If you are not at peace, it will show in the way you interact with the children around you. So let me not overflog this subject. Let's just
Sorry,
so somebody wants to share.
I wanted to come in there.
Okay, you wanted to come in. Yes, sir.
Yes, the truth of the matter, we have to be realistic. We can't be very idealistic in our, what I would say is that it's really not ideal. That's what I would say. I wouldn't say that it's not, you shouldn't yell. It's not ideal. It's not the ideal way to get children to behave. So because number one, the time that you are only encouraged to yell is when there's a fire or somebody is in danger. So you have to quickly get their attention. So I think you can call the child by name, whosoever is not is not maybe responding or is disrupting the class. You can call them and quietly and gently talk to them. And if they still might not listen, you don't have to yell, because sometimes, like Franklin mentioned, it can turn into a shouting match, where that's, if it's in a high school setting, the child can even reply you, and then both of you begin to exchange words in the class. I've heard of when that kind of a thing has happened. So it's not really ideal. There might be occasions where you might have to, but don't make it a habit that you must always raise your voice in the class. Like Franklin mentioned, is a tool for intimidation, whose voice can be loud. I'm the authority figure, so everybody must listen, and I have to shout at everybody. So I don't think it's the ideal way to get people's attention, or to get people to conform to maybe what you are trying to, so it's always better to call them individually, call them out, and let them know that what they are doing is wrong, and you are taking notes. And if they continue, you have to implement this disciplinary measure you have already stipulated out, maybe at the beginning of your classes with the children. So that is, so yelling is not a proper. So you have to work. So for a teacher who finds herself or himself having to resort to yelling, is something you need to find a better approach to work on that. What I've told you is better to call them out and talk. I mean, not call as in, you say, for instance, you say, Tunji, what you are doing is not right, and you know it. Can you stop? So I think that than you raising your voice and screaming at Tunji. So I feel you yourself, you're not managing yourself as you should. So that is what I have to say. So I don't know.
Yes, so we have, thank you, sir. We have Bankole Shade. I think you put up your hands to either ask a question or make a contribution. We can take your question for a minute or two if it's a question or contribution. Please unmute and speak with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for this opportunity. I found it as an opportunity. It's a contribution, actually. Like, thank God that you said all what you said. I totally agree with the topic you raised. That's why I said I wanted to join. Like, the first thing I wanted to contribute was what you said last. Like, we need to work on ourselves. I'm a teacher who works with teenagers, secondary school. Now, we need to work on ourselves, especially teachers. The first thing is a lot of people go in the system because they don't have other means of survival. Now, why I went into teaching, not because of the payment. I worked there to have time to take care of my kids. So whatever they wanted to pay me, it didn't mean anything to me because I already had other things I was doing. My husband was there. Now, the first thing is if teachers are not satisfied with their pay, they reflect back to the learning. Now, schools too, when teachers are angry, they're angry at the school, they're angry at the learner, they feel they are short paid, they now take out their reaction on the learner. Now, there's a lot of work that needs to be put in place as individuals. That's why they need to be training and relearning. Now, as a teacher that you want to teach people that should learn, I think you need to go in with a good mindset. I don't believe in using beating, using cane in children before they learn. I don't even see children, so you have to use cane because some of them rebel. I've had situations in my school where you beat a child and the next thing is the parents are bringing soldiers in. About issues with school where you have to start begging parents. I'm not the one at fault, but because I can solicit, I can beg. Now, some of these teachers, it's out of they're giving me small money, the teachers are paying high money, I'm not being treated fairly, all these things. So you're not supposed to need to go into this with a good mindset. That's me. And equally on the school part. Now the schools deliberately short pay their staff. There are no measures put in place to checkmate school authorities. There are no agencies checking out, okay, now they've increased minimum wage. At these schools, have they increased their minimum wage for their staff? Now, teachers are still there, so they've not found other means, especially a lot of them. So these things still need to be put in place. If not, you will still always have these kind of actions.
So kindly mute yourself, please. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Bankole, are you done?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. That's a very brilliant contribution, and we appreciate you for that. Hello, please kindly mute yourself, please. Help us mute unless you are invited to speak.
I've muted him, sorry.
All right, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Okay, so we have questions in the chat as well. I think most of the questions are the same. If you have a child in a class who always likes causing distractions during lessons, how would one handle such a child? That particular child always distracts the class learning. Another question is, in a class of 30 with a teacher without assistance, how can a teacher manage the class to achieve effective learning when you have 15 students who are recalcitrant in behavior? So these are challenging things, again, like Mr. Jonathan has said, and we will have to be realistic and not idealistic. Let me borrow his words, and very apt. It is true that we have situations like this, and just like Mrs. Bankole have mentioned, there are schools, or there's a lot of work that the schools need to do. Most of our schools are not helping the situation. How do you have, for instance, a class of 30 students and there is only one adult? In the place where we trained teachers, where I worked as an administrator, the rule is 1 adult to 10 children. So if you have an extra 1 over the 10, it means that there needs to be an extra adult in that classroom. So when you have a class of 30, it means that you should have at least 3 adults in that classroom, maybe 1 lead teacher and then 2 support staff. We know that these things, again, may sound idealistic, because how much are they paying, or how much will you pay each staff? How big is the school? These are the things. But if you want to go into any business, I feel that it is ideal to understand the business that you are going into. If you want to take up a profession in any field, in any industry, it is also ideal to study and know in that industry. Some of the things we are saying may sound idealistic, but that is where we need to get to. And when we get there, we may not be able to solve this problem. So like we have said, this may just be a conversation starter. There are things that we need to take back to our schools. We have some school administrators here, we have school owners. There are things that we need to begin to look around. And then when we have the opportunity to make suggestions to government, these are some of the things we also need to look at. We know that in government schools, we have a large population and then 1 adult teacher per time. That in itself does not set a good example. At least the private school owners are trying to some extent. They even pride themselves, we have just 15 or 12 in a class. That's one of their selling points to parents, with the name that they are able to personalize learning to each individual. But I'm sure that more schools would like to have more children than just 12 or 15 in a classroom, if they don't have the space to have more classes. So the more, the merrier for the school owner. But the real issue here is these things that we refer to as recalcitrance in children, these things that we refer to as distraction, are just children being children. I read a post this morning, and the author of that post was saying 10 reasons that we flog children that doesn't make sense. And some of those reasons include flogging children for being children. A child will behave like a child, but because you are an adult, you are looking at their behavior as recalcitrance. You are looking at their behavior as distracting. He or she is just being a child. So when you flog that child, or let me use the appropriate word as we do, when you discipline that child, the child is confused. What do you want me to do? Should I stop being a child? Children will play. Children will throw tantrums. Children will distract. They are almost not able to sit still for a long period of time. So how long is a lesson that you expect a child to sit and go through without distraction? So these are some adjustments that we need to make first in our minds as adults, in the school structure, that will help us to be more accommodating of the way of children. When I was in school at year 4, I studied education. At year 4, everybody within our set had to study guidance and counseling with focus on human development or developmental psychology. Because as a teacher, you are going to teach another human being. You need to know how each individual processes information, how they develop, and at each developmental stage, what behavior is expected of that individual. If you don't have this knowledge, especially for those who go into teaching because they didn't find job elsewhere, they just went in to make money, you will not have this background knowledge, and then you'll be frustrated on the job. So, but there are tools. Mr. Jonathan has mentioned that earlier. We are living in a time where information is available. If you find yourself in a teaching space and you were not initially trained as a teacher, go on YouTube, go online, research teaching skills or how to be a teacher, effective teaching skills, or like what I've mentioned, developmental psychology. Learn for yourself at age 2 what behaviors will children exhibit. At age 5, 10, all those milestones, let us get those information. When you know better, you will understand why the child is behaving that way, and you'll be more understanding and more accommodating than to dump your frustration. Because as teachers, we are racing with time. We want to cover up lessons. But the child does not have that milestone as you are. Children go to school to play. They don't have that mindset that I'm going to school to learn. It's parents that send children to school to learn. Teachers go to school to teach. Children go to school to play, to make friends. For them, it's an extension of home to just go and make friends and play. So if you understand how they think, you will be more accommodating and more understanding, and you will not be frustrated when they behave like typical children. So this is just my reaction to those questions. And I don't know if Mr. Jonathan have one or two things to say.
We have Mrs. Alolu Akbo. Her hand is up, so like you can unmute your mic and make your question.
All right.
Yes,
So good morning, everyone. Yes, first of all, I want to appreciate the organizers of this program for organizing this very enlightening webinar, because one has learned a lot and gained a lot from the discussions that have gone on in this webinar. So I really do appreciate you. And just to put in a word of encouragement, because I've seen a lot of questions in the chat room, where teachers are talking about how to handle parents who are troublemakers and scene creators, and then there's another person that is talking about when you have a child that is always causing distractions during lessons, how can you handle such a child, And I know Mr. Franklin just mentioned something like that, to understand what are the underlying factors causing that behavior, because there is something that is making the child to behave the way he or she is behaving. We always have children like that. I remember in my school, I have a child like that, and what I have done is to make him my friend. He's always making a lot of trouble in the bus, a lot of disciplinary issues in the bus. What I did is make him my friend, and then also I now gave him responsibility. So if anybody is now disturbing in the bus, you have to write down their names. So that gave him a sense of pride. And the reports of him bullying other children have really, really reduced. So in conclusion, I'd like to talk about discipleship. Discipline is from the word disciple. Let's look at how can we disciple these children. Connecting with them is when you connect with them that you can really be able to affect them. So when you are saying this person is my disciple, so that now comes to us. We ourselves, are we disciplined? Another speaker talked about that we need to work on ourselves. Are we disciplined? We want to discipline children, but are we disciplined? So we should focus on raising disciples. We should focus on connecting with those children. Let's not give up on them because of their parents that are misbehaving. God has a reason why he brought them into our space, and let us impact them for the time. They will never forget us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. That's very, very brilliant and most welcome. Again, these are some of the issues that we are hoping that as we take contributions, we will hear from, because this is not a one person knows it all. All of us that are in this space, I'm sure we all are teachers. we are educators in one aspect or the other. So, like I said earlier, it's a hall, and we want as much contributions as possible. So, we want to also take more contributions so that we don't just continue to hog the
Before
mic.
we take contribution, let me read what some people, the comments some people have posted, so that we also acknowledge
Okay,
them.
yes, sir.
So Samuel wrote that in a class of, I know you have made reference to this, but I'll just read it exactly so everybody hears what he wrote. In a class of 30 with a teacher without assistance, how can the teacher manage the class to achieve learning when you have 15 students who are recalcitrant? So he didn't state what class. Is it a nursery or primary or early primary class, or maybe primary
Exactly.
4 to 5,
Age
or
is
is it
important.
yes, because age is very important. Like Franklin mentioned, those children in the lower primary and the ones in nursery, particularly the ones in nursery, are just there to play. So trying to take them through boring lessons for a long time, you will just lose them and they will begin to have other things. So they need a lot of activities to engage them. And also for you as a teacher, you have to plan your lessons, knowing that you have 15 recalcitrant students. How are you going to engage those ones in some meaningful activities to keep their hands and their minds busy? And then how are you going to plan your class? How are you going to plan your lesson to make sure everybody is engaged? So most times when they are engaged in lesson in activities, you will have them being less disruptive. So most times this happens when they are bored, so they find way to what's it called, to excite themselves, so to make themselves, how do I put it, to engage themselves, which is what we now call disruption. So you have to plan, think of activities you can use to engage them, so that they can be break time, there can be time when you have time out for something else to do, and get everybody on board. That is a little suggestion I have. Then the other person, Zuro Zurowade Rachel, good morning, house. I believe discipline is an integral part of teaching. Without discipline, our classroom management skill is poor. Discipline is not meant to inflict pain in learners. That's correct. Rather, discipline is meant to make the learner realize their wrongdoings and accept the fact that they were wrong and receive the right disciplinary measure. I will say the right to receive correction, because you have to point them in the right. What are the behavioral expectations? So usually we use, because like we mentioned, that children are always children, so they do not know what, most of the time they do not really know what is the right or wrong behavior. So that is where disciplining comes in, so that you can model as a teacher and also point them towards the right behavior, the right reaction to situations. Maybe when they are angry, what is the best way? Should they, when they are angry, are they meant to hit another child, or should they report to a relevant authority so that they can take action and resolve the situation? So these are the ways, and you don't expect them to get it on the very first time you tell them. So it's an ongoing process until it becomes part of the child, on how to appropriately react when maybe they feel frustrated, or when they need to. So it's just trying to correct them and help them. So as a teacher, that is your role. You're an authority figure in the class, and you cannot turn your eyes away from the wrongs of these children, else you're just creating societal menace, because they will continue in this behavior, and then they will go out there, and one day they will inflict harm on somebody, or do something that will cause and bring shame to themselves, the family, and even the school. So you need to be at the place of correction, positive correction, correcting them positively, not shouting, not hitting, because violence is not really the solution to it. Maybe, yes, I'm not totally against maybe inflicting physical pain, but it has to be intentionally done, and also with the approval of the school authority, and also with the approval of the parents. Most times for children that are not mine, I usually will defer to the parents, and most schools do that. They defer to parents as regards maybe inflicting pain, that is maybe caning the child. So usually there will be a report that is sent home about the thing the child did in class or in school today. That is majorly meant to send a message to the parents that your child did this. So the parents, if they want to inflict some form of pain on the child, so they bring it to the child's attention. Because you did this, I'm going to give you 3, 5 strokes of the cane for doing that. Next time, don't do it again. And when you get back to class, tell teacher, tell your classmates that you are sorry, you will never do it again. So that is part of it, because disciplining process is all about rewards and consequences of actions. So if you do well, reward them, which also brings to the fact that don't always is not only when they are doing wrong, you are screaming at them. When they are doing right, are you also exalting that behavior? Are you commending them? Are you celebrating them? Yes, are you acknowledging the good things about the child? So it's not only when you're always pointing out the wrong things, it doesn't really help. So the child does always think that I'm off, I'm wrong, I'm never right. So no, we should also celebrate the little things that they do. If you come into a class and the class is quiet, celebrate them and acknowledge that this is how I want you all to try to keep it yourselves, compose yourselves in the class. Then the next question, last one I would like to read is from okay, I think that's the last one from Durowade. Yes, that's the last one. Okay, sorry, it's a different question. How can a child with parents who are troublemakers and sin creators be safely disciplined in school? I have seen cases where some teachers decide to look away as regards. Yes, you see, there's a role that the parents play in the child's upbringing and training. And if the parents are not in sync with what the school is doing, you will need to call them to a meeting and let them know that this is how this child is behaving, and we have tried severally, but it appears there's something going on. We don't really know why you're not on board, or how do you want us to help this child? And these are not willing to cooperate. I think, at certain points, if it's becoming something that is going to affect the entire class, the entire school, then you might just be. But I will never encourage anybody to discipline the child against the parents' consent. If the parents are not consenting, the best you can do is to excuse the child, send him or her to the head teacher's office for a timeout, and then he or she might come back. And if the parents react negatively, so all this has to be done with the support of the proprietor or the head of school, and then but without parental support, there's very little you can do, because that child will think that the parents are backing me, and they will always want to stay with the parents on the parents' side. So I think that is an area that you will need to work on with the parents. If you don't have their backing, then maybe the school has to decide if they want to keep them in the school, or they want to ask them to move on with their child for where they will feel comfortable with, with how they want the child to be raised. All right, thank you. I will stop there. Hello, Mr. Franklin, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I am here. Sorry, I had slight network downtime. So, but I'm back now. Yes, you've made some very, very valid contributions, and those are, in fact, you touched on one of the area where I really had a back and forth with some of the contributions that I had on the post that I made. And the last question from Rachel, I think also touched on that. What do we do in cases of children, and then where does the parents come in? And just like you mentioned, I would prefer, let me put it this way, because again, I don't want to make the rules, but I would prefer a situation where if a child is to be flogged, that should be referred to the home. But we know that most parents may either not do it, may not do it appropriately, or may not buy into, they don't agree with the school as to why the child should be flogged. So in fact, some parents would rather take their children to school and request that the child should be flogged. So, but you have also said it, the parents, the home is failing in many ways. And because of that, the school have had to step up to do a lot of parenting role that we should have done at home. So it's a dysfunction in our society. But again, that will not justify, some of the things that we have seen today that is happening in schools, where teachers take it upon themselves to become the teacher, the parents, the disciplinarian, and everything, and then justify it that we are Africans, or if we don't do it, the children will go bad. So if the child indeed needs to be flogged, there should be, a conversation with the home about it. That is my view. I feel personally.
Sorry, Mr. Franklin. I think I forgot something. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Please go on, sir.
Yes. One thing I want to say about flogging children is that flogging I mean the what we know about flogging that we know commonly is animals, isn't it? Like cows, those nama that when they see the aboki, they want to control the behavior of the cattle, they flog them so that they can stick to, you don't have to deviate from whatever they have been doing. And it's a conditioning tool, because when you keep flogging a child, you tell the child that the child needs some form of external control to be able to choose what is right. So what happens when that external control is no longer there? The child is no longer able to self-regulate and on their own choose certain behaviors that he or she wants to be identified with. So that is very important. We have seen cases where children have been used to flogging, and then maybe they go abroad where they don't flog, and those children go haywire. They begin to manifest all manner of behavior, trying to explore all the things that they feel they've been deprived of, and even some, unfortunately, even get into the wrong crowd, join gangs. Some of them get into drugs. Some of them say they are no longer, they are gay, they are lesbian. So many things, just because all the while they have been used to somebody using cane to say, this is the thing you do, flog. So when they get to where flogging is no longer the case, they become, no, so you don't want that to become part of the child's psyche. At a certain stage, flogging is no longer useful, particularly at those age 8 upwards. I mean, this child, at that age, they are beginning to know what they want for themselves. So talking is more relevant. Deprivation of certain privileges is also more relevant. So flogging, I think, at certain points, as a parent and also as teachers, you should just figure that it has no value. It rather it's inimical to the child's long-term positive growth. Exactly. I grew up in the 90s. I was in school in the 90s when flogging was the key, and that was the military era of Nigeria. My father was a soldier, was in the army. My siblings went to military school, command schools, what they call command schools, and flogging was the order of the day. Looking from hindsight, looking what that did to them, it made all of us to be conformist. We don't challenge authority.
Yeah.
Wherever we are, we must conform. Whether it's in workplace, we cannot raise questions even when we know that something is going wrong. Even when we know that something is going wrong. So, and most times, we will not say, I knew this was wrong, but I couldn't say because, I've been told to conform. So, and you see that the people that will cause change are those that dare to teach outside, that to think outside the box. The Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, they do things that every other person is not doing. Bill Gates was coding and building a career out of coding when every other child was being trained for the workplace. But he at 12 was already building a career to work for himself. He was a non-conformist. Same with Elon Musk, saying that you want to go and land or take human beings to Mars. I mean, that is a non-conformist thinking. So when you begin to use cane to control people, you kill that part of initiative thinking in them. So these are things we don't want as educators. To a large extent, we want our children to be inventors, to be innovators, to be risk takers. So we will have to find a balance to see how we allow the children to be exploratory and then welcome their out of the box thinking. Not every child will be alike. Identify their individuality, welcome it, celebrate it, and help properly channel it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You have really hit the nail on the head. And I believe that this is the big takeaway for this conversation. We use control to get children to behave in certain ways, and that is not the way human beings should be raised. And that has, to a large extent, been the reason why Africa is where it is today. And we must start changing the narrative, and it will start from our schools, it will start from our homes. So educators and teachers need to begin to think differently and do differently. So not to overstretch the conversation, let's just begin to take it home. If we have any other question, maybe one or two, we'll take before we finally call it a wrap. We're almost 1 hour, 30 minutes gone. So
somebody has a question here, Mr. Joshua Tyro. He says, understanding the fact that children will always behave like children, how can we, or how do we correct an excessive child without sending such a child out of the class? Yes, I don't know what you mean by excessive. So I'm not really, that context is not well defined. But frankly,
so again, if we continue to define a child's behavior from our position or perspective as adults, it will be like we say the proverbial looking at people from your high horse. Because like I've mentioned earlier, children are always disruptive. It is in their nature. We were all children once. So what happens to us, like Mr. Jonathan has vividly painted, is that we were controlled, we were conditioned with the use of the stick in most cases. Just like him, I grew up under a police officer. And it doesn't matter whether you are black or white or otherwise, you are given the same treatment. I grew up in the police barracks, and there was the control, exertion of authority by parents and in schools. In fact, there was a particular time I was in class. I remember I was in primary school at the time. I was sitting and the teacher was teaching somewhere at the board. We had a large crowd as usual in the public school. And where I was sitting, I was just fiddling with an eraser and a pen, as in I was just holding it whilst I was listening to the teacher. Now, any right-thinking human being will know that you don't listen with your eyes or with your, I am paying attention to you while I'm holding my pen and an eraser. But a teacher came from my behind and flogged me with cane on my head. And that cane was flexible. It swung from my head and hit me in the eye. And her excuse was that I was playing while a teacher was teaching. Now, you don't know if I was playing. I was not making noise. I was not saying anything. I was just holding an eraser and a pen. And in her mind, I was playing. I was not paying attention to the lesson. And she had to use a stick to call me to order. Now, we cannot raise an objection because that was the era then. But in this generation, beginning to change. Those of us who are coming out from that era are beginning to see and observe a difference in the children we are raising today, and we are uncomfortable with them. And we call them excess, we call them excessive, we call them recalcitrant, we call them stubborn, we call them all sort of names. But that is the child that you and I ought to be. But we were, that instinct, that liveliness of childhood was conditioned to an adult state. So many of us grew up while we were still children, because the adults in our life then thought it was wise to condition us in that manner. Now we want to pass on the same. And it is not only in this behavioral control, it is in other aspects. For instance, some time ago, I shared a post and I told people, I said, we are moving fast into the age of AI. Very soon, very, very soon. In fact, it is very closer than we think. A lot of the things that teachers boast to be telling or to be teaching children will no longer be relevant. children will have enough information that school will be almost irrelevant. So the teachers will then need to redefine themselves, reinvent themselves, and define the role of educators in the lives of children. You and I, this our generation, for those of us in our 40s, we are in the cross bridge of that era. We are coming from an of no computers, and we are in the bridge and moving into the age of AI and computing. We have gone past the computer age. We are now moving into the AI age, where children will have information at their fingertips. Some of the things that we force children to cram today, formulas, codes, numbers, all of those things will no longer become relevant, because why do I need to cram them when they are on my fingertips? When that time changes, teachers will need to reinvent themselves. But you see a lot of teachers today in their 30s, in their 40s, they are struggling with it because they want to maintain the traditional roles of teacher, where the teacher is the one impacting knowledge. Teachers don't impact knowledge anymore. Teachers facilitate learning. Knowledge and information, they are plenty everywhere. Children have gadgets that give them all this information that you are struggling to tell them. The only thing that you and I need to do now is to help them to see what information is relevant for them at this time and what they should reserve for later. So if we don't reinvent ourselves, we will quickly phase out. So we need to understand that a lot of control that we are used to will no longer be relevant. The children we are raising for this alpha generation, they will question a lot of things. So those things we describe as excessive are children being children. Yes, I agree with you. It may be disruptive, but just like Mr. Jonathan has mentioned, and I'm sure a few others have mentioned, that child that you feel is disruptive, that has too much energy, engage that child. Find something to give to that child. If others have 2 or 3 classworks to do, give that child 10. Before he or she will be done with 10, or before the other ones will be done with the 3, and then he probably would have been done with 5. So find a way to engage the child so that the child, it can be activity, it can be lesson, it can be whatever. But let us not be quick to label children as recalcitrant, as stubborn, as disruptive, as excessive, just because we don't understand them. It is an error on our own part as the adults. We need to learn, we need to understand, and we need to find a way to accommodate these children into our space. Again, somebody has paid for the service that you are to render to that child. So if that person has paid you for that service, we need to find innovative ways to render that service. That woman in that video wanted to teach the child because somebody is paying her for that service, but she's forcing the consumer to accept her method. That is not the way business operates. You as the business provider, as the service provider, you need to find a way to appeal to your customer or the consumer, not forcing the consumer to accept your own method. So these are, cultural reorientation that needs to happen in the minds of educators, school owners, school administrators, teachers, educators, or education providers. We need to reorientate ourselves. We need to reinvent ourselves. We need to reimagine the world of education in the light of what is obtainable in today's world. We're no longer in the traditional age where teachers just sit and talk and children will just sit down and listen, whether they understand or not, they just move away. And then we have seen a lot of gaps. Today's children are not like those children. So we need to have a lot of understanding and, reblending of ourselves. That's why as an adult, before you step into the classroom, you need to come to that place of spiritual renewal. Renew your mind. Get to know, go online, read, study the children of this generation. What are their makeup? How do they think? How do they behave? What is their attention span? What do they expect from adults? How do they react? So get to know. There are a lot of literature out there. Get all of this information. It will put you at a better position as an educational provider. For school owners here, these are some of the things you need to make available to your teachers. Let them engage, learn more about the children of this age, and see how we can do things better. The goal is to raise the next generation through education. And if we are failing at that, we are not meeting up our target. So, Mrs. Maigbe, mentioned some of the things that I would have used as my closing remarks. So I'm just going to run through them quickly because they are very, very important. So in my closing remark, I mentioned that discipline and discipleship offer two different approaches to personal and organizational growth, especially in parenting, education, and leadership or on human capital development. And if we focus on discipleship rather than discipline as educators, we will achieve better results. And I think for me, this is very, very important. What is the difference? For instance, when we started, I mentioned a lot of people know what discipline is not. But you ask them, okay, what is discipline? They don't know. They tell you discipline is not beating. Okay, what is discipline? They still do not know. So whereas we tell ourselves what discipline is not, we don't really know what discipline is. And then in the context of how we use it, we are referring to the control, we are referring to conditioning, we are referring to methods that we apply to get children to behave in a certain way, not to be themselves. And yet we say that that is not, discipline is not this, is not that. So we need to really be clear about what we are doing as adults or as educators. Are we trying to control the behavior of the children, or we are trying to ignite the spark in them to make them to become who they really ought to be? So these are the questions we need to take away and answer. So what is discipline? It is the structured practice of enforcing rules, standards, and behaviors. It is often external, as Mr. Jonathan have mentioned, but aims to build self-regulation over time. So the hope with discipline is that if we apply it long enough, eventually the children will get it and they will start behaving well. But it often doesn't work out that way. At the end of the day, we build resentment in the minds of the children. We even encourage the recalcitrance, or they wait for us when we are no longer in the picture. They behave the way they like. Check it out. In many homes, in many situations where the adults seem to be dominant, when they are not in the picture, the children go haywire. But when they are around, everybody is behaving. That is not good. You want your children to behave in the same way they will behave when you are there and when you are not there. That is the idea. But when you tend to control or condition them in a certain way, then when you are not available, just like Mr. Jonathan have mentioned, either they travel out or they go to school, then they go all out to misbehave. And we don't want that. We want our children to remain good, well-behaved over time. So if discipline focuses on rules, on structures, order, and the expected outcome is self-control, consistent habits, and achieving set targets, it is often corrective and demands obedience and compliance. It involves consequences or rewards, and it instills to instill the desired behavior. So these are some of the things that have been mentioned. In a school or workplace, certain discipline ensures that the system is adhered to, and then every member of staff or everyone in the system adheres to what is expected. But on the contrary, as opposed to discipline, the nature of discipleship is relational. Mrs. Aigbe mentioned it. You connect with the children. You are not just in your high horse setting rules. You must obey, you must obey, you must do. You are connecting with the individual. And that is more effective than just dishing out rules. It is inspiring willingness in the other individual and commitment rather than demand and coercion. It nurtures understanding, accountability, and mutual trust. This may sound idealistic, but it is really achievable. If as educators, as teachers, you have this mindset, you walk into your classroom, you will really, really connect with your children. You will find that you will gain more control than you would have if you just set rules and try to force them to obey those rules. So in leadership, in education, discipleship goes beyond enforcing rules to developing leaders who embody and propagate that core value that you expect of them. So what are the key differences? Here we have discipline focuses on creating order and enforcing productivity, whereas discipleship develops individuals to be leaders and stewards. Discipline also is enforced, but discipleship invites participation through teaching. Again, discipline addresses behavior, while discipleship shapes the character. So discipline, like we have mentioned here, I've mentioned severally, discipline is external. It focuses on the manifested behavior, whereas discipleship digs into the core of the individual. You are able to connect with that person and not just dishing out rules or rewarding or punishing external behavior. You want to get through to that person, understand why this person is this way, and then see how you can, together with that individual, steer them towards the right direction. So I will not end this without saying to us that just one of the questions I asked earlier, can I, as a person, help another person to be self-regulated? The answer is yes, but I will not be able to achieve that if I am focused on exerting my authority over that person. I would rather be able to achieve that if I connect with that person in a more meaningful relationship that will help that person to understand me and I understand the person. And teachers can really do this for every single child in their space. It is a lot of work. It takes a lot of determination, but it is possible, it is achievable. And I believe that if we commit ourselves to it, we can do better, we can be better, and we can have a better educated population in the nearest future. So education is not just about memorization of facts, getting A1s in examinations. That is not education. We say in psychology or in education that education, the impact of education is change in behavior. And that change in behavior cannot be externally enforced. It has to come from within. So you need to seek the cooperation of the individual for his or her behavior to be well regulated. That child needs to partner with you so that it will be a seamless journey. But if you continue to force it, you will get exhausted, you will get frustrated, and then you probably will resort to whatever measures, send them out of the class, go to the naughty corner, beat them, yell at them because you are frustrated. But if you enlist their participation, their cooperation through discipleship, through relationship, you will achieve better results than you would have if you focus only on managing their external behavior. So this is the bit that we have in this town hall. I hope we did not overshoot the 2 hours mark. Okay, yeah, this is just 11:46. So if we have any final points to make, just a few, maybe in the next 3-4 minutes, I will be glad to take it and then we'll call it a wrap. I hope that this session has been meaningful for every one of us who started and concluded with us. Unfortunately, we couldn't have 2 of our other resource persons. I sent several reminders. I thought that they would be here. They had indicated interest to participate, but maybe they had other engagements which I'm not privy to at this time. But we hope to continue to do this from time to time, maybe look at other aspects of education, these unspoken issues that have plagued our education industry. We need to keep talking about it. We need to keep reorientating ourselves. We need to reinventing ourselves so that we can have better classrooms and education space. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Jonathan, please.
Sorry to just wanted to mention that I have done this training for some schools in the past on positive discipline and also creating a win-win classroom. So I have been magnanimous enough to share those slides at no cost on the chat box. So if you're interested, you can quickly download them before we end this meeting, so you can have it for yourself. So if you have to use it anywhere, please make reference to the person who gave it to you. So I believe in sharing knowledge because also be helped by that. So I believe we can, most of the times people behave in a certain way because they don't know better. So we need to go and seek more information. We need to attend events and forums like this and also seek other opportunities to grow our understanding of the issue so that we can have a well-informed and well-constructed approach and behavior in certain situations. Thank you very much for your time. God bless everyone. Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much, sir. I've got them. I've downloaded them. Thank you for sharing. That's very generous of you. Again, these are some of the things we are talking about. We share, we have information, we share. And then I also saw one of your posts on LinkedIn that speaks about the global economic outlook and how it will affect schools. That's another very inspiring one. So please get in touch with Mr. Jonathan if you are on this platform. Mark Dale Education is his handle on Instagram, and I think on LinkedIn you can also see him as Jonathan Aigbe. He's doing fantastic work in the education space. We need to collaborate. We need to exchange knowledge and then get to know more. I believe, and which is the mantra for White Word Veritas project, if we know more, we will do better, we will live better, and then we will our society will become better. So that is why this information sharing, this town hall was organized, so that we can share knowledge with everyone contributing. And maybe next month, we'll look at another area, we'll focus on another topic. So thank you so much for everyone who has participated today. There's those who have shared their contribution, those who sent their questions through the chat. We appreciate you. These 2 hours you have spent with us, we do not take it for granted, and we really are grateful that you found our town hall worth of your time or worthy of your time. So we hope that when we call you again, you will oblige us, and we'll continue to learn from you as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend ahead. And we pray that your schools will benefit from the information that you have received through this webinar. Thank you. And then if you also want to get in touch with us, our details are on the screen. On Facebook, Instagram, we are White Word Veritas Project, and we share things like this that is hopeful to build everyone within the education space. So our trainings focuses on the school administration, school teachers, and then even the students. As I said earlier, I'm a psychologist or counselor by training. So we also do some work with the children, educational, career counseling, and vocational counseling. So you can engage with us, and we'll be at your service. Thank you very much, and do have a pleasant day ahead and weekend. All right, bye, Mr. Jonathan. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you, sir. All right.